Hello, this is Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica, and today we are going to talk about a viewer's comments about training that is designed to make you sexy versus not designed to make you sexy. This topic is coming up in regards to kettlebell marathon training. I have been making some videos about my own personal program where we've been talking about kettlebell marathon training, picking up a kettlebell, a light to intermediate weight, and not putting it down for long periods of time in the 30 to 60 minute range. What I have said in the past is that that type of training is not designed to make you sexy. Let me elaborate on that further. Training that is designed to make you sexy tends to be heavy weights for short periods of time. Training that is designed more for endurance performance would be doing things for long periods of time. I'm going to pull up an example here. We're going to use running as the most basic example of this because it's very easy to see. A marathon runner tends to be, on average, generally considered less sexy than something like a sprinter. The same thing is true in swimming. Somebody who swims 5,000 meters tends to be generally less sexy than somebody who swims a 100 meter or a 400 meter. This has to do with power output. Learning to have maximum power output generally makes people sexier. Sexier can be determined scientifically. Bigger glutes, larger calves, wider upper body for the most part. There are a lot of general things that will determine humans being generally sexier across populations, across cultures. You can look all that up. That's beyond the purview of this video. But generally, if a program is designed to make you sexy, it's focusing on short bursts of work. But as the time period goes up, usually the overall sexiness goes down. I know it's a weird way to think about it, but it is kind of true. Usually, the most attractive athletes are those who do the burst activities, the sprint activities. Gymnast sprint activities, for the most part, usually the fighters or the martial arts that have the sexiest overall structure are usually those that focus on those huge power output and power bursts. It doesn't carry over everything. It's not a perfect analogy, but usually, like when I design programs in the beginning, people tend to sexy up a bit in the beginning because the bursts are short in the beginning and the weight is ramping up. So let's think about the Nerd Math Swing program that is out on the market. The time frames that people are swinging weights start really low. You're starting, 4 to 8 reps. So 10 seconds of work, 50 seconds of break, and then that ramps up to 30 seconds of work, 30 seconds of break. Then you can either go up in weight and repeat that cycle, or you add complexity to stay at the same weight and repeat again. But they are short bursts of work followed by break. As you go up in weight, people add more muscle mass in the fundamental way, and they are basically working on sprint dynamics for the heart. It's not exactly perfect, of course, but that's kind of the general idea. The same thing is true of the clean and press program, where we start with about 1 minute of work, 1 minute of break, and build up into the 2.5 minutes of work or 3 minutes of work for the far part of the program and 1 minute break. And then that's kind of mimicking the time frames of a 100 meter sprint up towards like a 500 meter sprint for most people. So a lot of our basic programs follow that idea of burst of work followed by burst of rest, burst of work, burst of rest, and then combining those movements, complex movements and all these things in different ways will get you a very specific effect. By just focusing on the basics in the beginning and doing a real basic program that carries over for a long period of time with small changes in complexity or increases in weight, people tend to get sexier much faster. In the context of kettlebell marathoning, it tends to be pretty different. You're focusing on endurance, the unification of structure, breathing, and movement for a long period of time. Running for 30 minutes is different than running sprints for 30 minutes. They have very different effects on the body. So think about that, kind of a rough overview of the idea of workouts that are designed to be sexy. Workouts that would designed to be sexy with kettlebells would be a combination of monster lifts. I should probably make a bunch of videos on this because I don't think I've ever really covered this topic in depth. Designing kettlebell programs for sexiness. The shortest possible version of that would be combine your basic movements in different mathematical structures for a short burst of time, in the 5 to 15 minute range of training. We don't talk about that a lot because for the most part, you already have to have a good mastery of the basics in order to survive that type of training. Most people try to skip to that intermediate type of sexy program, which is a combination of different types of monster lifts, without ever really focusing on the basics. I focus very heavily on the basics on this channel because I don't feel that a lot of people give the basics the consideration that they need in order for people to move up athletically in their programs. Most people try to skip the beginning and go to the middle or the end, and that tends to detract from the overall quality of their athletic programming as they move forward. But you can easily design programs to just make people sexy. It's just a different idea than designing for endurance. But it's all built upon your foundation of the basics. Your foundation of the basics is short periods of work so that you can maintain your structure, breathing, and your movement so that you don't get hurt. And then same thing is true with club work as opposed to kettlebell work. In the beginning, you focus on small numbers of reps. With single arm, it's 3 to 5 reps. That has an effect of making people generally pretty sexy pretty quickly. The difference between half cycles and full cycles with that is pretty apparent. Focusing on half centuries, building up to 50 total reps instead of a full century of 100 total reps tends to make people sexier faster because they can go up in weight faster. The problem with that is sometimes people's joints don't have enough time to catch up, and the tendons and the ligaments inside their joints break down before their muscles do. So there's always a fine balance in the beginning of training. Think about the general physical preparedness or base athletic skill training taking 3 to 4 years. That'd be the same way it would be in any type of professional sports program. If you have a collegiate athlete, they have 4 years of high school training and then they have 4 years of college training. Think about those guys having 8 years of solid training before the end of it. So don't skip that initial phase. But that initial phase of training can make anybody generally pretty sexy pretty quickly. The other type of program writing that can make people sexy is to combine disparate elements of training. Something that we talk about a lot on this channel is our program design and setting up different types of training for 2 days a week. And I'm always kind of commenting on that you could set up, 5 different types of training all at 2 days a week and do 10 workouts a week. And that tends to work out very well for most people because those types of training tend to have different times under tension, different amounts of load. That allows people not to fall into specialization, and that allows people to recover from one type of movement with another type of movement. It's an active recovery trick, but it tends to also make people generally pretty sexy. Focusing on one thing specifically tends to make people less sexy unless it's something like ballet. Ballet is an entirely different monster, mainly because ballerinas have a very unique type of structural demand and they train for an obsessively long period of time to become good at their sport. You're thinking 10 to 18 years with them. So it's not a short-term program at all. And it tends to be a terrible solution for somebody trying to get sexy in the short term. So we can talk more about this topic in the future if people want to talk about this topic. It is a very unique type of design consideration, and design considerations for different sports are always what we're interested in. Are you engineering the outcome that you want to achieve? You can effectively engineer for all the different types of outcomes that you want, but endurance program design is not designed to make you sexy for the most part. Even if it's a food-related issue, it's designed for endurance. It's designed for the unification of structure, breathing, and movement. It is not designed for maximum power in short periods of time.